Hey guys, it's Willie Sandry. Project of the day, installing a variable speed servo motor on your industrial sewing machine. Stick around, we'll get right into it. Your servo motor may come with a 75mm large motor pulley installed, and those are fine for light duty sewing applications, but I do a lot of leather work, so I prefer a much smaller motor pulley in the 45 to 55mm range. So we'll show you how to install one of those. The small motor pulley installs with the same woodruff key that came with your motor, and then comes the small motor pulley. Goes right over a little slot, a little keyway for the woodruff key. Star washer, lock washer, and then just thread the nut on. And the easiest way I've found to install these is just with a 19mm impact driver. Just enough to compress the sides of the split ring washer, and that's all it takes. Let's look at some of the parts that come in the kit. So you have your wiring loom with your power switch for the motor. There's a fuse. Usually you get a separate fuse that installs here. I've never had one blow. Guard. You can discard the larger pulley if you decide to use the smaller pulley. And extra set of brushes that go for the motor. You'll probably never have to replace those. And then there's a hardware packet. And as far as the hardware packet, extra cork brake for the motor. These last a very long time. These are vibration dampeners that you can use to mount the motor, along with bolt kits. If your table has through bolts, you'll use these carriage bolts. Ours doesn't in this case. Today we're going to be showing how to mount it with threaded inserts from the underside, because that's how the table came from the factory. And various other nuts and bolts, screws for your guard. And here's a bit of hardware that I don't use. These are wire clips that attach with nails from the underside of the table. I prefer these clips that you can install with screws, simply because it's really hard to hammer in a tiny screw from the underside of the table. So just use these basic wiring loom clips. The patient today is a Juki LU563. And I've got to say, I haven't seen many nicer machines than that. It's got original paint on it, and it's just sparkling clean. It'll be a fun one to work on. Okay, first step is to bolt the motor in place, and for that we'll just use these rubber grommets that help to isolate vibration between the motor and the table. And then we're just going to use through bolts that install through threaded inserts from the bottom. Alright, so we'll go ahead and drop the motor in position and tighten those bolts up. Once you get the bolts started anyway, you can focus on aligning the pulley with the slot in the table. Just sight from the top of the table, and when your motor pulley is lined up in the middle of the slot in the table, just by visual inspection, then you're aligned properly. And then once you're sure that the motor is lined up where it needs to be, go ahead and snug the bolts down. Set your motor speed between 12 and 1500 to get started. You can always increase the speed and power as you get more comfortable with your machine. Okay, and then we'll need to route our wiring so that we can mount the switch. I usually mount it on the right side of the sewing machine, just up front here. And go ahead and mount your switch with a couple of self-tapping screws. From there, just go ahead and manage your wires with some wire clips and some more self-tapping screws. Hard work though. Sometimes Trooper gets tired. Trooper get tired sometimes? Hey buddy, good boy. Alright, back to work. Another screw on the back side is a good idea to keep the cords out of harm's way. That ought to do it. There's a 110 volt outlet here if you'd like to plug in your lamp for the top of the table. It works really well. Turn on the power to the motor and your light comes on too. Pretty convenient that way. There's a switch that changes the direction of rotation on the back of the motor here, If your machine sewed before a motor swap and it doesn't now, just flip the switch. You probably have it set the wrong way. When you swap your clutch motor for a servo motor, you'll need to change the length of the belt. They're just 3/8 inch V belts, and I've got a 38 inch and a 39 inch belt to try today. Slip one end around the motor pulley and then tip the machine back and slide it on the pulley up top. From there, all we have to do is adjust the belt tension underneath. Belt tension is adjusted with these nuts here. Just lower this nut down until you have light tension at the belt, and then snug up this nut from underneath. Properly adjusted belt tension looks like this. In fact, at first glance, you'll feel like it's too loose. But if it doesn't slip at this setting, you'll find the machine actually runs better. It'll let you make a nice, slow, controlled start, and you'll avoid kind of that jackrabbit start where you lose control for the first few stitches. So start on the loose side. If it slips in use, you can always tighten it up, but a loose belt will run much better than one that's too tight. Your foot pedal linkage installs just here. Go ahead and put it on the furthest hole out towards the operator. Tightens up with the nut and lock washer. And the foot pedal linkage installs the same way at the bottom. Finally, adjust the pinch linkage so you can have your foot pedal at whatever angle you like and snug that up. Once the belt is properly tensioned, don't forget to set the bobbin winder. With this lever retracted, you want to slide the bobbin winder until it's nearly touching the belt, and from that position go ahead and tighten up the 2 screws. Alright, let's fire up the servo for the first time. And now we should have really good control, slow speed and leather, and stitch by stitch if we want. And again, that speed is not all the way down. It's between 12 and 1500. And so I feel like I can control a machine just fine with a servo motor and a small pulley. And that's even if it doesn't have a special speed reducer. So if you get the chance to swap over from a clutch motor to a servo motor, I'd say by all means do it. It's really going to improve the control and the whole experience behind the sewing machine, so give it a shot. You can still go fast if you want to, but it's easy to control and go nice and slow when you need to. Okay, so here's the typical kind of control you can have with the servo motor. You can slow it down where you need to. You can come right down into the corner. You might hand wheel it a half a stitch where necessary. Bury the needle, pivot around the corner. And this is all by foot control. I've got my servo motor set between 12 and 1500 RPM, and I'm able to get that sort of a control without too much trouble. Now, if I am working on a project that I'm really comfortable with and I want to make some mileage, I have no problem moving along a little quicker, and reverse stitching is still well controlled. So I think it's a good solution. It's a good compromise between a really fast clutch motor and something extremely slow like a servo with a speed reducer. Just a servo with a small motor pulley is probably the best of both worlds, and it's an inexpensive way to get to that point where you really enjoy your machine again. Alright guys, that's a lowdown on how to put a servo on your industrial sewing machine, a walking foot in this case. It'll take you about an hour, and that's if you stop for a coffee break. Try it yourself. Thanks for watching.